Good evening. I've talked with many teachers, students, and community members about this year's valedictorian, Kevin Burdge, and I can tell you that the superlatives used to describe this young man were so effusive that they seemed, at first blush, to be laced with hyperbole. You guys know hyperbole. You had Miss Sperry, right? All right. But because I know Kevin so well, I knew that the descriptions of him were accurate. Now, Kevin is not your typical science geek brainiac, and that's because his geekishness carries over into virtually every academic field, except PE, which, by the way, was his biggest worry going into his senior year. Kevin's passion for learning, regardless of the subject area, is fueled by an intellectual curiosity like I have never seen. What is remarkable about this young man is that he doesn't just learn for the sake of learning. He applies everything he has learned to his life, and he shares what he has learned with others. If you want proof of this, I ask you to simply pay attention to what Kevin is getting ready to tell you. It's my distinct privilege and honor to introduce the Heidelberg High School 2011 valedictorian, Kevin Burdge.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Okay, so I had a hard time figuring out what I was going to say to you guys tonight. Initially, I originally wanted to start the speech by saying that I had contemplated what to say at a high school graduation extensively. Then someone informed me that one of the goals of the speech is to keep people awake. Those of you who enjoy sleep, you can blame Mr. Hatch for that. Actually, to be honest, I initially had objections to giving the speech, as administration opposed me wearing my Darth Vader suit and reciting The Empire Strikes Back. However, I'm still here speaking to you tonight. Should I have stood with my convictions and dogmatically defended my individuality? I thought about it and realized that I was not entitled to give this speech tonight. I realized that some of you would cry out in protest, citing that my accomplishments in high school entitle me to giving this address. After much thought, I realized that I am lucky to be up here speaking to you tonight, not entitled to it. And it is my obligation to use my good fortune to speak to you. I'm now going to be asking some of the seniors in the front row to participate in helping me put my topic into perspective. Could the front row of seniors here on my left, 10 of them, please stand up? You represent all of the people in the world. Now, could the first 10 seniors on my right in the front row please stand up? You represent all of the students at HHS. So, let's talk about poverty. The United States government defines the poverty line at an individual having to live off of less than $30 a day. So, let's look at world poverty as represented by our standing seniors. Now, of the 10 of you here on the left, I would like 8 of you to sit down. Of the 10 on the right, no one sits down because no one at HHS lives in poverty. By seating 8 students, we have just eliminated the proportion of the world population that has to live off of less than $10 a day. That is only 1/3 of what our government defines as poverty. My point in this demonstration, you ask? As you can see, everyone representing HHS students is still standing, while out of the individuals representing the world's population, only 2 are standing. And that is based on making less than $10 a day. I ask you, why is it that we at HHS are so fortunate and so many people in the rest of the world are so unfortunate? Is it because we are entitled to be well provided for and free of poverty? Is it because the vast majority of the rest of the world deserves to suffer? Of course not. That would be absurd. None of us is entitled to the great opportunity we have because of our fortune of having been born into Western society. I am not entitled to give this speech, despite the fortunate circumstance that I have a high grade point average. Those of us who did not get into their school of choice should remind themselves that only 1 out of every 100 people have the opportunity of a college education. And I'd venture to say that 6.6 billion people, that's billion with a B, would gladly trade places with any of you attending college to go to any school. In fact, for over 90% of the world's population, the chance to trade places with anyone in this room would be like winning the lottery, only better. Okay, everyone can sit down now. Many would argue that we are entitled to our great lives because of our hard work and our family's hard work and their ancestors' hard work and so on. Frankly, I'd like to address this misconception as well. The vast majority of those living in poverty work much harder in their daily lives than anyone in this room. Work does not necessarily equate accomplishment. When I walked into Mr. Smola's AP Physics B class, I was terrified. I had heard rumors of the impossible workload of AP courses. It turns out my fears were unfounded. I didn't have to put that much work into the course. I excelled, I accomplished, I reached a peak in physics. I was good at it, and I accomplished that without too much effort. However, when I walked into AP Lit class my junior year, I was terrified once again. I had heard horror stories, also known as Sperry stories, about how incredibly difficult the course was. One friend describing it to me as, quote, like the trenches in World War I. You write a decent essay, and you kind of poke your head out of the trench, and then you get shot down with the next one. End quote. My fears about lit were founded. I had to work in that class, work hard, and you know, it felt good. No, I did not accomplish as much in lit as I did in physics. The point of the story is, I put much more effort and hard work into AP Lit, but I still succeeded far more in AP Physics despite my lack of work. In the end, both courses were incredibly satisfying in their own way. I may not have accomplished as much in Lit, but every accomplishment held much meaning because I had to work for them. My point is, work is admirable. However, we cannot throughout life simply work and thus feel entitled to accomplishment. I have made that error and still fall prey to the misconception myself. Ultimately, Joseph Conrad captured the essence of work's value in Marlowe's observation that, quote, I don't like work. I'd rather laze about and think of all the fine things that can be done. I don't like work. No man does. But I like what is in the work. the chance to find yourself, your own reality, for yourself, not for others, what no other man can ever know." End quote. Thus, I ask you to consider the intrinsic value of work rather than merely the superficial extrinsic motivators. Work is part of life. There is no given path. In fact, those of you who are planning your life based on who you perceive yourself to be are making a grave error. Instead, you should embrace the experiences and opportunities in life and let them help you grow as an individual and shape who you will become. As the wise New York Times writer David Brooks proclaimed, quote, "The purpose in life is not to find yourself, it's to lose yourself." End quote. I ask you to embrace this wisdom. If you find a career, let it help shape you. If you fall in love, let that help determine who you are. However, exercise responsibility in whatever you become. You have the good fortune and opportunity to greatly affect the lives of those around you. Maintain some epistemological modesty. Realize the limitless consequences your actions can have. Reflect on the difference between work and accomplishment. And think about it next time you're exposed to people in poverty. Ask yourself, am I really entitled to a better situation than them because I have worked harder, or am I simply lucky? Chase, could you please stand up? If this room of 1,000 people were the entire world, and all of the world's combined riches were only $1,000, this one man, as represented by Chase, would control 250 of those dollars by himself. I ask you, is this because Chase worked 250 times harder than all the rest of the people in this room combined? Of course not. Okay, Chase, you can sit down. In Herman Melville's Moby Dick, a chapter describes a rope tied around two men as a safety precaution. One man extracting oil from a whale in the water, surrounded by voracious, hungry, sharks tearing at the whale, and the other man safe back on the deck of the ship. The rope, a monkey rope, binds the fates of the two men, because if the man standing on the whale falls in, he drags the other into the sea. Melville's thesis is that we are all bound together in a grand network of monkey ropes. Think about that for a second. Now, let's apply that thesis to life. If we have the good fortune to be one of those individuals standing on the deck of a ship, it is our responsibility to pull those falling back into the sea back to safety. As I have explained, everyone in this room has been blessed with enormous opportunity by being relatively safe on the deck of the ship. Let's use our fortuitous position of safety to bring the safety of opportunity to others. According to the existentialist author Ayn Rand, our lives are centered on finding individual happiness and satisfying our own self-interest. And her novel, Atlas Shrugged, addresses the danger of the most accomplished individuals being dragged down into the abyss by the less accomplished and incompetent. All I can say is, I have more faith in humanity than she. Thank you.